Okay, we can call the meeting to order. I'd like to make the following statement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the panel members. Lynn Nesbitt to my left, Jeff Pichet, to my far left.
Page.
Looks French. Pichet. The assessor today is
Jennifer Martin.
Jennifer Martin. She's right. Now it is. Call you. So I don't call you Brian. And the administrative assistant today is Kelsey Harrison. We will be hearing applications for revision of assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matter must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record, and I would ask you to please put your phones on silent. Thank you. Swear them in, please.
Do you swear in?
Could you please state your name?
Jennifer Martins.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Could you please state your name?
Rocky Newton.
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
First file today is 1156 McPhillips Street, and it's the amount of assessed value. Jennifer, when you are ready.
This is file number 19-2192, roll number 140609636100. The assessed value is $1,374,000. The classification is 20 and the liability status is taxable. This is a single apartment building with 2 stories. It was built in 1961 with an effective age of 1971. There are 12 suites and 5 outdoor parking spots. There was a sale of this property in 2015, and the sale price was $1,020,000. On page 2, we have an income value summary. There are 5 one-bedroom units and 7 two-bedroom units. We have an average monthly rent per unit at $912.45. We've applied a 3% vacancy, a 45% expense rate, and a 5.1% cap rate, giving us the $1,374,000. Here are a couple comparable rents on page 3. And on page 4, we have the city's capitalization rates. Page 5, we have the capitalization rate evidence, which is, the purpose of which is for showing the individual capitalization rates, just to substantiate the model, and it's not specific to the subject property. Page 6, we have Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, and on page 7, 8, and 9, we have the income information from this property owner. And on page 10, we have a small map showing that this is on McPhillip Street, south of Inkster. And we have 2 overhead pictures. Thank you.
Mr. Neufeld, do you have some questions?
Yes. Just start off, valuation, page 2, is by the model,
Yes, it is.
no overrides here?
No overrides.
And is this as renovated?
Yes.
Okay. And the picture on page 10 shows the subject property, but just to confirm that we're going to be hearing all 3 of these properties today?
Yes.
And so they generally would operate as one economic unit, same ownership?
We don't have them set up as a single economic unit.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Same ownership though.
yes.
I know they have different corporate names, but you are aware that it's the same people running it, okay?
Yes,
And all 3 were sold on the same day,
yes,
multi-role sale?
yes.
Weight on that? Is the weight on that not limited, based on the IAAO standards?
We don't use the sale as, our valuation isn't based on the sale price.
Right.
Our valuation is based on the income value that we have on it, which is supported by the.
Right, so you're not putting any weight on it anyway, but in general, it is not by the IAAO standards to avoid multi-role sales unless much more data is available and research done.
Yes.
And you're, and I think you're being very clear about the ones on page 5, which is the evidence to support the model, but it's has been brought out that 2 of these properties are pre-renovation cap rate sales.
It has, although the information that we had at the time of the cap rate analysis was that the one.
You came into possession of this in September, I believe?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And which 2 were those?
That wasn't that 394 Talbot and 285 Maxwell?
I believe so, yes. And so on that basis, a pre-renovation sale means that there was an income in place, it sold, the cap was developed in that purpose, but that's not the motivation behind the sale.
Yes.
Okay. One last issue. When you have a property that's gone through renovation, it's customary to kick everybody out, right? And then you have to refill it? That's generally the way people do it.
Frequently, yes, although with the Tenancy Act,
Gives them some rights to come back.
gives them the right of first refusal, I think it is,
Yeah, at the new.
at the new
rate.
valuation.
Now,
But-
on that basis, isn't there generally a lag after renovation's been complete and absorption has been done? And the reason I'm asking this is, on page 9, you don't have a rent roll, you have a budget rent roll. So that would indicate where they're going to be dealing with the short-term vacancy.
Yes,
Now, in the model, is there a way of dealing with the short-term vacancy, which would likely apply to one of the 2-year cycles, or, sorry, 1 2-year cycle?
we can override the vacancy rate.
Okay, and was that done?
No, it was not.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Rock?
Yeah, sorry, those are my questions. And they'll be the same ones for, save some time on the other 2.
Okay, Lynn?
Yeah, I have a question about your capitalization rate.
Yes.
So we talked about that this is a renovated property, first of all, and the effective year has gone from 61 to 71. So
Yes.
what type of renovations and how would you describe the condition of the property?
The renovation description that we have in the department is that the renovations to each individual unit include a renovated kitchen with melamine kitchen cabinets, flow-form countertops, sink and taps, new vinyl flooring, tile backsplash, Remove kitchen ceiling fan, reroute fan ducting. So they had to remove a small portion from the ceiling and doing ducting for ceiling fans. Remove plaster from plumbing wall, replace with 5/8 fireboard. Renovated bathrooms, including new tub, new sink cabinet, new tile tub surround, new bathroom fixtures, sinks, taps, towel and toilet paper holders, new vinyl flooring, new bathroom fan, remove all walls and ceiling, plaster in the bathroom, replace with 5/8 fireboard, replace toilet lead bend and flange, new paint throughout, white ceilings, white trim, wall color, and then miscellaneous upgrades, all new suite entry lever door handles, rekeyed suite locks, new flooring in all bedrooms, hall and living areas, new lights, plugs and switches, new interior doors, new baseboards, new windows, new hallway carpet base, new in-suite door handle, install new plumbing risers, and change the electric panel. So it was somewhat extensive.
Sounds it. And that resulted in a 10-year change to your effective age?
Yes.
Okay, and that was based on an inspection of the property?
I'm not sure if it was through conversation or inspection or just using the permits that we have.
Is there a value to the permits that you have?
Yes. 176,964.
176,964.
And that's just for this building.
For this one building, right?
Yes.
Which is what we're talking about here. And so your cap rate of 5.1, and I just wanted to take a look at your table here. That's on the lower end. I mean, I guess it's kind of in the middle.
Yes.
And you have how would you describe the condition of this property?
I would say that when you're walking in and you see all new flooring, everything's been painted, all of your fixtures and cupboards are all brand new. I would say that the condition is pretty good right now.
And as of April 1, was it, for 2018, was it full?
I'm not sure what the vacancy was at the time.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Do you know the nature, sorry, Mr. Chairman, do you know the nature of the original construction? Is it cinder block or wood structure?
Masonry bearing walls.
Okay. No other questions.
And I've got no questions, Mr. Newfield, on your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Some of this is partial rebuttal, but it's also common knowledge. The five main elements of a multifamily property that the RT Residential Tenancies Branch looks at to justify above guideline increases are the mechanical, the foundation, the framing, the envelope, and the interior finish. Now, in order to get a lifting of the total, get a 5-year holiday on rent control, you have to do 3 of those 5 major elements. Now, what the assessor described is 2 of the major elements, which is the interior and some of the mechanical. And windows in itself doesn't constitute the envelope because you need thermal upgrades, insulation. You'll generally see a building being renovated with an extra insulation layer. At the same time, you do a new roof that covers off your envelope requirement. No one ever does foundation, so everyone focuses on that. So what we're looking at here is not 5-year an exemption from RTB. It's what's called an above guideline increase. So you take the capital you've invested, you go to RTB and say, I'm doing all this work, I'm normally allowed a 1.5% increase. Tell me how much I'm allowed when I do this work. And then they give you a number, and that's what you get. So that there are several ways of doing it. Now, in the process, of course, because of the disturbance to the residential areas, it does require the units to be vacated. But the work that was done here, although the list was long, it's relatively minor. An interior refurbishment of a suite We've seen budget numbers between 10 to 20,000. It's not huge money versus a roof, which, you know, by itself might be 20, 30 grand, that sort of thing. So it is, I just want to make sure it's characterized the right way, that in the multifamily world, this is a minor renovation. So with the vacating, and then they put down budget projections, and we are relying on the assessor's numbers, because we did have a statement too, and you'll see that actual numbers after the renovation felt below projections, but supported what the assessor has. So in this case, the model kind of backed into these numbers. And we've noticed this an awful lot on renovated projects where their numbers do come close. Often the model puts, for older buildings that haven't got these, it goes lower. They show higher incomes than people are actually experiencing. Might give us an idea of the model being likely more reliable on properties that have achieved above guideline increases, rather than ones that are dealing with RTB of 1% a year. So the issue we have with this is the absorption period, for one. A property that goes through this is gonna lose money for the first 2 years until it's stabilized. We're talking, and by the way, I talk about neighborhoods, and sometimes it may seem derogatory. It's not. It's simply an acceptance of the socioeconomic characteristics of the neighborhood. It's not what one would describe as a neighborhood that's has higher earning demographics, and so you can't go in there and expect to get $1,400 rent. And the rents that they are looking at, as you can see, are $900 to almost $1,100. And you'll also notice they apply healthy residential discounts. So what I'm talking about on the absorption side is when newly redone units come back on the market, actually there's several properties like this today, the landlord offers a discount to get people to move in, which is usually the first month or 1 month free. And then the concept is that the tenant will re-sign at the end, and you won't have to offer the discount again. What is happening is that Winnipeg, for the first time in about 20 years, is experiencing more product on the market. So people now have the opportunity to bump to the next property and get a 1 month off break there and move. And when I was a kid, that's what I did. My first apartment, I got 1 month free, $265 a month. That's a lot of money. When the lease was up, I moved to another one. It was $235 a month, and I got 1 month free. But I guess that was a lot of money for me. $1,000 a month is a lot of money. And the moving expenses, if you throw it all into your truck or your car and move it to the next building, it's not a factor. This is what we're seeing now in the market. So what you're seeing is sort of you fill up, you lose 15%, you fill up. Next year you lose another 15%, you fill up. So in the time it takes you to refill, you're running with vacancies. And so that now on properties at the higher ends, at $2,000 a month properties we've looked at, this absorption can take up to 10 years. I have one property that's still trying to absorb after 10 years. I have another property that successfully absorbed in about 4 years. So that's what we're keeping in mind on these projects. And just to give you an idea of the ones we looked at for our cap rate on page 33, there's 26 and 45 Hargrave. This one was sold after renovation and then after first time absorption, and based on that it was at 6.62%. This was the number that was agreed to between the parties. Our company did the transaction. I have all the documentation. This is the pro forma they had on it. This is how it was supposed to. However, the parties knew that there was going to be some of this first year turnover, and then less in the second and less in the third, and eventually it would stabilize. So that's one that was sold right after renovation, and that's the one we're relying on the most, because it shows a decision-making process of a newly renovated site. And after 4 or 5 years, that number's gonna stabilize, and you'll start to see that become more competitive. Nowhere near at 5.1%, but you will see the number on the market show interest in numbers hovering around the 6% mark, 5.75 to 6.25, depending on the nature of the interest. Another property on page 32 is a partially done unit. Now, this is 1830 Portage. So this was advertised for sale. Prior to sale, the owner spent a fair amount of money on fixing and upgrades. And this one was doing the same method, which was above guideline increases. So every time some money was spent, they would get an above guideline increase. And in this case, I think the numbers were like 4 to 7% based on what they did, rather than the 1 or 1.5% that RTV allowed. So it was on the market for several months, and eventually the property manager made an offer to purchase it at 6.58%. And the last one I'm going to mention is 333 Ward, which the assessment department lists at 5%. However, that's from income and expense questionnaires, because that's their policy. They use income and expense questionnaires. My number comes from the valuation done for the sale. And what's important here is that one was built in 2006, and it was sold when it became absorbed. 10-year cycle, so every year, up, down, up, down, up, down, and when it finally stabilized, they brought it to market. So when you are using a income and expense form from previous year's operation, which is during the periods of absorption, it's not going to give you the full picture as it would the income done at time of sale. Now, this sale was done, Colliers was the broker on the site, and you've all heard these debates from, I think Altus is presenting them on this site about what the true cap is. All I can say is that Colliers represented it, and the meeting of the minds, that's what we call it in the business, the meeting of the minds. When people made the decision was 5.5%. And that's the proper definition of a cap, is what did the meeting of the minds, what did they agree to? Not what an income and expense questionnaire from a year or two prior said. So on that basis, that's why we're looking for first 2-year cycle at 6.5%, and I suspect that in the next cycle, it will be lower as it begins to stabilize. That's my presentation.
Questions? Jim?
Oh, sorry, one small correction. Yeah, you just got away with that. The assessor had 5 outdoor parking. I think it's more than that. Take a look at the pictures. They're just saying that we don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, probably more, but
Because there's
yeah,
9.
there's a strip in the back.
Right, there's 12, 9, and 12. And the whole strip at the back is for parking. So I
Yeah.
think maybe
Maybe more parking.
each unit has a different number. Sorry.
That's okay, thank you. All of my records have that this construction was done in 2016. So this would have been it happened 4 years ago. So is the property not on an upswing now?
Oh, certainly, 2016, but our reference date is April 1st, 2018. So at that point in time, they had about a year of operation when they're with it. So if you're finished sometime in 2016, I don't know when your permit date is.
It's between when the permits and when work actually gets done, but because I believe that this was part of the 2018
Yeah. The
deal.
the cycle, the absorption cycle on properties is It does vary, like I said, depending on the unit, how good it is, how desirable it is. There's, like I said, there was one in southwest Winnipeg was well-built, well-located, underground parking, and it stabilized in 4 years. But then we're dealing with other properties, 3-story walk-ups in places, new ones that weren't in the best locations for rentals, and were cheaper construction. And so it's the never-ending cycle of, well, it does end eventually, but people who rent don't have a lot of furniture, as an example, and they're renting because they don't have any, the cash is tighter, right? They can't afford a mortgage. So when someone comes along and says, oh, we'll give you a free month rent here, they go, that's $1,000, that's, I can buy, fill in the blanks here. But you know, it's not like, say, a house owner who would say, well, $1,000, that's nothing. It's not, okay. My furniture mover costs more than that. So it is a different socioeconomic class, and we all know that when I was a renter, that's what we did. We moved along, and so Winnipeg is seeing this though, first time in decades.
Okay. And with using the Hargrave property as the closest comparable, would you say that there's any difference in the cap rate for that neighborhood compared to the cap rate for this neighborhood?
Cap rates are best where there's people who rent,
Okay.
as opposed to a lot of things, and so that's gonna be like a rental neighborhood, so, and having a product that fits the people who live there. The one I mentioned, Southwest Winnipeg, went upscale, $2,000 a rent, nice neighborhood, they figured it out, right? But if you put a lower income one there, it would be a bad cap, same as if you put a high rental income on Phillips. So if you fit your market, the hottest market in Winnipeg for multifamily has always been Elmwood, then St. Boniface. Simply because there's a lot of demand in Elmwood, and St. Boniface, it's this old, it's a neighborhood issue. They cap higher than, St. Boniface caps higher than anywhere else. And I think it's a cultural issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Jeff?
The Collier's 2018 cap rates for multifamily low-rise 5 to 6% range. You highlighted 333 Ward on your page 32, 5.5 on the
Right.
midpoint.
Yes.
And you're coming with this substantially higher cap. I've heard the presentation. I'm looking at the Collier midpoint. I'm looking at 333 Ward, which you've highlighted. Why are we not going 5.5?
Oh, certainly. So are you looking at page 17, the
Yes.
college report? Okay. Sorry, I know you haven't heard my sermon before.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, in 30 words or less. I think I've heard it a couple of times.
I've never
Oh,
heard
I've heard
30
it.
words or less.
Well, no, this is the new challenge.
Okay.
Try this. Page 19,
That's 2.
quality. Page 20, adjustments to rate.
Yes, all right.
17, advertising blurb.
Right. Okay.
21, adjust to real world. We use
Yes.
commissions
Yes.
in the calculation of cap,
Yes,
so
yes.
the real mid is, the real thing is, so this would be a low rise 5.5 to 6.5, and this property on its own would not meet would not be in our report. But in conjunction with the other three,
Yes.
it's likely it would be, because it offers enough units.
Thank you, that's great.
Lynn?
I had the same question with Pat.
Could have been 60 words. And I've got no questions. Anything in summation?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I got something new I'll add to the next one.
I never worry. The next property we will deal with is 1162. Looks like a sister. I don't know why we don't call them brothers, we always call them sisters.
We do, yeah.
Women make the money.
Oh, that's why. When you are ready, Jennifer.
Thank you. This is file number 19-2202, roll number 1406096210. The assessed value is $1,030,000. Classification is 20. The liability status is taxable. This is an apartment building, one building, 2 stories, built in 1961, effective year is 1971. We have for this one, the sale the same date as the previous one. And on this one, we have that the sale price was $765,000. On page 2, we have our income value summary. This property has 1 bachelor and 8 2-bedroom units. The average monthly rent per unit is $911.42. Vacancy rate of 3%, expense rate at 45%, capitalization rate at 5.1%, giving us the $1,030,000. There's some rent comparables, and if we go to page 7 through page 9, we have the income information from the property owner. And on page 10, of the 3 buildings, this one is the middle one. Thank you.
Mr. Newcoat, do you have any questions?
Same questions as the last one, assumed, asked, and answered?
Yes.
Okay, last new question. Does the assessment department recognize a difference in the expense ratio for properties that have fewer units? Is it anything to do with the number of units?
I'm not sure about the finer points of the model and how,
Well, for example, this one's got
mhm.
9, and expense ratio 45%. The previous one, with 12 units, expense ratio 45%. I know it's a small difference.
Mm,
I'm just wondering if any of it has to do with the number of units, or it's all age and...
It might have to do with the number of units, but we're talking about the difference between 9 units and 12 units, so there's.
Right, that's a small
Really,
one.
like-
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not sure,
You don't know how the model deals with it? Okay.
I'm not privy to the finer details of the model.
Thank you.
You're done, Jeff?
No questions.
Lynn?
So this is also a renovated property, same renovations as in the previous?
Yes, this one, the cost of renovation was $132,705.
Okay, and last time we touched on it, but didn't ask it. Anything structural, or is it mostly, I don't want to say cosmetic, that's not quite right,
Yeah.
but
Just try to look.
mechanical?
It involves some plumbing, some electrical, there's electrical, a whole different page of electrical stuff. But for the most part, it looks like they redid a lot of the electrical stuff, and then plumbing and painting and carpets.
Like limited plumbing, we characterize that as limited? Windows, anything?
Replacement of all existing windows, plumbing and electrical work to be done, cosmetic work to all existing 9 suites.
Okay. And was this also done in 2016?
I believe it was, yes, it was done in 2016.
Would the renovations, a renovated unit be reflected in the 2018 reassessment, or is this the first time?
This was discussed in the 2018,
as well?
yes.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
Mr. Newfield, on with your presentation.
Thank you. Very little that differs on this. It is part of the other unit as a portfolio. The parking, I believe there's adequate parking. Just looking at the pictures, I can't recall the back of it, but I don't think there is a parking issue here. I think, well, code is 1.4 parking stalls per unit, so on the whole complex, you're required then to have 1224, 33 times 1.4. You're required to have 47 stalls. There aren't 47 stalls, but I don't think it's a major detriment due to location. We've done the same thing as we've used the assessor's income, which is fairly close to the projections, and the only difference is the cap rate. And the reason our modelers cap this a bit higher is because the smaller unit size, and the reasoning behind that is the smaller number of units, the lower the revenue base is for expenses. And the major issue would be an item that, where there's a fixed expense item, say an accountant's fee. It's gonna be the same number if you got a 9-unit block or a 12-unit block, but on a 12-unit block, you split it up, you get 25%, 33% greater revenue to do it over, so therefore the expense load is less. So that's just a fixed expense issue on it. Other fixed expenses, for example, a good one is a door. Every building's got 2 doors. So if you gotta replace a door for $1,000, if you got 9 units or you got 30 units, you're better off with more units. You spread it out over a greater amount. So there's stabler expenses. The other, on the revenue side, it's stabler revenue, because if you have 1 unit go vacant in a 30-unit block, that represents 3% vacancy if it's vacant for the whole year. On a 9-unit block, it's 11% vacancy. So an investor, the target I've always believed is 30+ units before you hit an optimal number where the differences on the unit size don't matter as much anymore. Because once you get to 30 units, then you got other costs that could come in. You might have to get an elevator, so you could have 60 units, but now you need an elevator, so it starts to even out on that basis. Anything below 30, we always believe you keep going down and down. Some of our properties, we've got 4-unit complexes and 8-unit complexes where the expense ratios are 60%, simply for that reason. But having said all that, this is one economic unit. There are all of these total units. We are looking at the sale. Primary is our evidence is the one in Hargrave, which was 2 units, which totaled about the same amount as this. So I'm just going to change our cap to 6.5%. That number then becomes 807,908, rounded to 808,000. Lastly, I won't say this for argument, if I could, speed things along. The concept of a cap rate has to also deal with the investment window. So if you buy something, you put money into it, the optimal yield on it isn't the next day. That's what's called cost. If you sell it immediately, you don't realize your value increase. Like the concept is you buy land or you buy an existing block, you invest money into it, you plant your seed, and then you wait for the time when it's mature to sell it, not the next year. And if you sell it before then, you know, it's like cultivating a crop before it reaches maturity. You get a poor yield. So in apartments, as I was telling you earlier about the the revenue growth and stabilization, you're generally looking at a 5 to 10 year investment target, where you know that you're going to do this work, and after stabilization, you're going to hit maximum value anywhere between the 5th and the 10th year. And that's quicker than most properties, and the reason being is that you're only signing 1-year leases. So if you have issues, or if you want to reinvest or put more money into it and get increases, you're free to do it. In the commercial world, it's longer, it's closer to 10 years, because most leases are 5 years in length, and you have to work with the contractual restrictions, which means that if you have a tenant, you'd like to get more rent out of it, you're gonna upgrade your place, you're not getting that money until his lease expires and you can re-up them, right? And then sometimes you have to have a vacancy, spend a year getting it. So I'm just discussing the concepts of investment of money and maturity. If you try to mature it too soon, you're taking a discount, and they have to have a target. And so that's why when we're talking about the costs and the renovation, they won't see, now when they do reach fruition, they should generate a positive profit, which is not just there's two sources of profit, obviously. One is the income coming off the property, that's the primary profit, and then there's a hope for an appreciation as well within that cycle. So perhaps you might pick up 10 to 15% appreciation along with the income along the way. But that's not hitting you until the 5 to 10 years after absorption and stabilization. Thank you.
Question?
No, thank you.
Lynn?
I have no questions.
I know that.
I guess, I do want to touch on the one unit, because you called it one economic unit under one portfolio, but right now you've got it split between the 3 buildings. Will the value go up, or not the value, will the cap rate actually go down when the 3 are looked upon as a one economic unit? Because you'll have a greater number of...
Yeah, I think it'll be more viable in the market as one economic unit, because again, the concept of having 33 units rather than just 12, 9, and 12 will be a safer investment. But we have looked at it on that basis as one economic unit. We've decided, like, if we looked at each one on an individual basis, I think it'd sort of be like sharp practice, you know? That's not what we're out to do. In reality, it is one economic unit. That's how I'm looking at it, and again, my comparable, that I was telling you about Hargrave, 2 units, 34 in total, each is 17. So it is above the 30 threshold I like to see.
Okay, that concludes the matter. I think we're gonna skip one and go to the next one on McPhillips at 1168. That's the other sister, isn't it? Is that okay with the panel members?
Sure, absolutely.
Then we will have the 3 in order and less confusion. So let's do 1168 McPhillips when you are ready, Jennifer.
Thank you. This is file number 19-2208, roll number 14060960100. The assessed value is $1,374,000. The classification is 20, and the liability status is taxable. This is an apartment building, 1 building, 2 stories, built in 1961. Effective year is 1971. The number of suites is 12, and we have 5 outdoor parking spots, but we've already touched on that issue. If we look on page 2, this one has 5 1-bedroom units and 7 2-bedroom units, 3% vacancy, 45% expense rate, 5.1% capitalization rate, and that gives us the $1,374,000. We have our income information, and on page 11, we've got the map that shows this is the 3rd property on the end of the street there, and it is the one that's closest to Inkster. Thank you.
Questions, Rocky? I think they're all the same.
All done.
First one, all done.
Except the parking, of course, would probably be a bit more than that.
Yeah.
On all three of them. Any questions from the panel members? None? Thank you. Rocky, did you want to make a presentation, or is it the same as above?
First, I'm going to start off with a question. If I was asked to answer something in 30 words or less, and there are 3 properties, do I get 90 words?
Yes,
Yes.
I'll give you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I still don't think it's possible.
Well, there was just one thing I was gonna point out, and I was just scanning the files, I wanna make sure I got it all. So these were appealed 2 years ago, and you saw that I put the number from 2 years ago. Every single one of them had the penalty applied, and I'm looking through the files, and the address for service was correct. The new owner missed these, so we didn't appeal because a penalty would be applied, and basically the amount of money at stake didn't justify the cost of further appeal. So we left them alone. And now we got their statements in, so now we're gonna pursue value.
That was a good way to close. Any questions on that, Jennifer?
No, thank you.
I don't want to look like I'm pushing or anything. Panel members? Good.
I have no question.
That concludes that matter. Yeah, simple that one. Let's move on to 765 Henderson Highway. Jennifer, when you are ready, and it's amount of assessed value again.
Thank you. This is file number 19-4502, roll number 02-01-14-08-000. The assessed value is $1,005,000, classification is 20, liability status is taxable. This again is an apartment building, one building with 2 stories. The actual year built is 1952, but the effective year built is 1970. There's 11 suites and 5 outdoor parking spots. On page 2, we have the suite mix. There are 5 one-bedroom units and 6 two-bedroom units. The average monthly rent per unit is $786.29. We've applied a vacancy rate of 2.6% and an expense rate of 49.29% and a capitalization rate at 5.1%, giving the $1,005,000. There are some rental comparables on page 3. And the income and expense information is page 7 through page 9. And then on the back on page 10, there's a map showing that this is on Henderson, north of Kimberly. And then at the bottom there's a picture. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Was this model, page 2?
Yes.
No overrides there?
No overrides.
Do you have a record of any work being done on this property?
I don't have anything with me, but seeing that there's an effective year built compared to an actual year built, I'm assuming that there is, but I don't have any of the information about that.
Okay. Did you have a chance to look at the statement?
I can't remember.
Well, on your page 8 and 9.
Mhm. Our income is higher.
Yeah, no, their income I see is negative, although they put some mortgage adjustments of approximately $16,000. So their income is substantially lower than what the assessor has.
Yes.
Okay. a major part of that then would be the income.
Mm-hmm.
They're showing $72,000 in income, and you're at 103,000.
Yes.
Okay. And considering the vacancy is a 10%, or sorry, I read the wrong lines. They're showing 58,800 as gross income. Considering that the vacancy is about 25%, was there any thought to an override for vacancy?
When I was looking at this, it wasn't at the same time where we're applying overrides.
Oh, okay. Any thought towards that then today? I don't want to put you on the spot, you can't do it, and there's a secret code word that say I'm not allowed to.
I think that perhaps is in the hands of our
Okay.
panel members.
That's the code word.
Thank you, those are my questions.
Lynn?
Did you inspect this property?
No, I did not.
Has it been inspected recently?
I'm not sure. I don't know when any of the, when the adjustment was made, so I'm not sure if there was an inspection at that time.
An adjustment?
The adjustment to the effective year build?
Okay. Yes, don't know when that happened. Okay, this has a 5.1 cap, and I know that there's an age breakdown on your cap rates. Can you remind me what those are?
I don't know what they are. I don't have that with me.
Okay. You don't know where that, a 1970 building would be in relation to your cap rate?
No.
All right, I have no more questions then.
Jeff?
Any work done?
There,
Any permits?
not that I had with me, but I'm not sure which, what permits.
No. You don't know the nature of the work?
No.
Okay, thanks. No questions?
And I've got no questions. On with your presentation, Mr. Nichol.
Thank you. On the statement, which the assessors provided, I'm not sure if it's in my brief yet. Yes, it is. Page 4 and 5 and 6. Well, what we've done is presented a couple of years of statements, sorry, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, the last year, which was 2017, the net income, actual net income was $15,029.55. Now, I got that number, just so you know, is there's two entries that don't belong. One is mortgage payment, and the next is principal reduction, and one is a positive and one is a negative. So taking those out, the number becomes 15,000. Now, the previous year, our calculation of the net income was a fair bit higher. And in summary, on page 1, it was 37,000. And in the year prior to that was 45,000. So what we have here is declining revenue, 45, 37, and then 15. And all due to vacancy. The previous 2 years showed very marginal vacancies in line with what the assessment department uses, while the last year showed a very large vacancy. Now, one question say, well, maybe they were doing work on it and they were kicking people out and stuff and doing things. So in order to, just by answering that question in the statements, is look for any sort of costs. Now, firstly is repairs and maintenance, which were $12,246, so that's $1,100 a unit, perfectly normal. As a matter of fact, that's on the low side, nothing showing there. This particular property owner, they will declare any rehabilitation costs as a capital cost, and then they'll put a journal entry later to take it out, so it doesn't affect financial operations. So then you would look at page 4 to see if they've made that entry, and there are no entries there for costs. They always declare their costs in their statements. It's the way their company is set up. You might even see one, because I think we have one more of their properties where they put it in as a capital and then take it out later because it's capital, or they expense it and they take it out as a capital change. Now I haven't got to the bottom of why they had such a large vacancy, but if you recall, one of the things I said a little while back is that if you have a small block and you have one vacancy, you're much more effective. And so 11 units, one vacancy is 9%. They're at approximately 25%, so that's 3 units. 3 units in a 30 unit block is going to be 10%, and a 60 unit block is 5%. And so in there lies the vulnerability to vacancy. We decided that, and we had a brief discussion, I did, with property manager, and they said that there was no specific reason for it, just a very bad year. And so what we decided to do was stabilize it. So we took the as full income and only applied a 2.6% vacancy, changing our NOI to $36,000 for that particular year. In our stabilization, though, we did use the lower income, which is $79,973, being $82,000 less the vacancy. And our expenses are based on a 3-year average, which they're fairly normal. And then we come up with our NOI of $38,367. So we do have a vacancy that one of the 3 years, we have an NOI that one of the 3 years was not good. Normally, you should be able to see a low 6s on something like this, and because of that reason, we had an option. One is we apply a higher vacancy rate, or secondly, to apply a higher cap rate. And the vacancy rate, much like what the assessment department says, if it's a 1 year, you may find other ways to stabilize it. If it's 2 years, then you have to start looking at the property. But if we show these financial statements, 3 years of financial statements to a potential purchaser, I think the reaction is going to be, well, you got a bad year, but I think the market is good and we're going to recover. So you're going to take a hit on your value for that 1 year, but it won't be a huge one, because this is a product that does sell eventually. People like this as an investment. So, as I said, normally we would likely be looking somewhere around low 6s, and that's why we're at 6.5%. And to give you an idea of where this would fall in without the vacancy issue, some of our more closer comparables would be, let me see if I've got some more stable ones. Well, page 36, it's a much different product, being a high-rise downtown and historic designation, but 228 Notre Dame was showing 5.53. We had these 3 blocks, which I can't identify the names of because they were done in our office, and there's some privacy right issues. They range from 636 to 779. They were older blocks. The newest of them at 1951 hit 636, and I knew that to be a reliable number. So I just think it would perform, because it has a history of performance, and sorry, didn't have my whole speech prepared. Page, I guess it's in the assessor's rate. page 9 of the assessor's brief shows the rent roll. And you can see that the rents range from $574 to about $636. The last properties we're talking about $900 to $1,000. So if I was an investor saying, you mean, okay, I'm trying to rent out at $500 to $600, I know I'm gonna fix the problem, which is why I'm a little more optimistic. It's not a major issue. If it was a major issue, you'd be looking at 7s and 8s. But it is something that's gonna cost them on either their cap or their vacancy. So my choice was a one-time application of a higher vacancy rate, which would drive the income down likely about $6,000–7,000 to maybe around $31,000, and applying then a cap in and around 6, so that's going to get you about a little over $500,000, or stabilizing it, assuming vacancy is market, but then applying a half-point penalty for the risk factor. That was my decision. So I just want to let you know that it's not all about the cap. It's all about picking the right method to deal with a vacancy. Do I look for higher vacancy, or do I look for higher cap? My opinion is this is a cap-related issue. Thank you.
Jen?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I must have zoned out for a little minute.
Well, I did while I was talking. So.
The high vacancy, can you explain to me why there's a high vacancy?
All I got from them is that it was just a series of turnovers. I got no costs, no permits, no changes on it. It was a bad year.
So historically,
Historically, it's been very, very good.
so this is an aberration.
Right.
This 1 year.
Right.
Okay.
But an aberration is, unlike your first offense in court, you don't get a free ride. Speak for myself. An aberration, you still have to face some doubt in the market, so you're gonna get hit by something. As I said, aberration means it's not a vacancy issue, it's an investment cap concern.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of portfolios, the Kimberly and the two buildings next door, they were sisters at one time, but are they owned by different people now?
Kimberly?
This is the Kimberly block, isn't it?
Oh, Kinderly.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I see that. No, they're different now, because one's got a little trellis in the front.
I know, but are they all owned by the same owner?
No.
No?
Because it's a client of mine, and I don't believe so. We would have had it on appeal then, because I would have appealed it.
Well, no, because they've already been remodeled.
A while back. I think, and there's not enough there to do above guideline increases.
I got no further questions. Need 5?
Yeah,
I'm gonna take 5.
thank you.
Anytime. We won't put that on yet. I'll call this meeting back to order. Next property on our agenda is 1924 Portage Avenue, amount of assessed value.
This is file number 19-2234. Roll number 0704045300. The assessed value is $1,744,000. Classification is 20. Liability status is taxable. Again, this is an apartment building, 1 building, 3 stories. Actual year built was 1953, effective year built was 1974. 17 suites and 6 outdoor parking spots. On page 2, we have our income value summary. There are 6 bachelor units and 11 one-bedroom units. Average monthly rent per unit is $814.12. Vacancy rate is 2.6. Expense rate is 45%, and capitalization rate is 5.1, giving us the estimated market value of $1,744,000. There are some comparable rents on page 3, and the income information from the owner is on page 7 and 8, and there's a map and a picture on page 9. Thank you.
Mr. Newfield, questions?
All done by the model?
Yes.
And this case, you have 6 parking stalls. Just wondering, your picture, page 9, is at an angle. Where did the source for that come?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I see page 8, they say 8 stalls.
Is that an 8 or 6?
I thought it was 6.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, 6, okay.
It's fuzzy.
Yeah, I heard the bad printer excuse yesterday from another assessor.
I think they have to get a new printer over there, because your pages are coming, we can't read them, you might as well not bother putting them in.
I'm finding this conversation very triggering. This has been,
Well, wait a sec, they bought all those old inkjet printers when they went on sale and went out, so they gotta use them up first.
this has been an ongoing,
Like, has anybody talked to them over there? Like, the evidence, it's nice of you to present it, but we'd like to read it.
I agree.
Thank you. On with your report, please, Rocky.
No, so, on that, follow up on that question, I know it's not fair to ask you about my evidence, except in this case, it's a picture on my page 2, which is, got a angle completely above the site.
Mm-hmm.
But, looking at that and looking at your picture, do you see any parking stalls? I see 2.
This may also be treated similar to the McPhillips ones.
Right, okay.
As a single economic unit with
1918.
1918, and
Yeah.
isn't it also
No, not
1945?
1930, it's 1945.
1945.
Yeah, but that's across the street.
Yeah. Yeah, because they,
18 and 24 are together. Okay. So, so those could all be on,
those are on different roll numbers, but it could be that, I'm not sure how the owner decides that, but that's what's presented to us.
well, unlike the last property, I'm wondering if you would think that, agree with me that the number of parking spaces here is far more limited. We have 17 units in this building, 17 units next door, and looks to be about 10 parking spots in total.
I would agree, but also, similar to your comment with the other one, due to location, and I don't know if the parking is as big of a negative factor as it is in some other locations. Being right on Portage Avenue, yeah, I don't know.
Okay. But it is far below code, right?
It is,
I'm not the code, sorry, parking bylaw.
yes, but this is also, I don't know if this one, because of the year it's built, if that's going to be,
Illegal non-conforming?
yes.
Yeah, but it's not so much an issue of whether it violates the bylaw, it's a question of would you not be able to achieve greater income or stability if you had more parking stalls? Winnipeg is still a driving town, right?
Yes, it is.
And sure, if you have a car.
I live outside the city though. If I lived on Portage Avenue, I wouldn't be driving into work every day.
Well, you still have a car, but you take the bus in,
But
because you have to. We all do. Yeah, sorry.
No,
I think that's a different conversation. I know several adults in my friendship circle that don't drive.
Okay. Now, did you have a chance to look at their statement and review it on your pages, page 8, sorry?
I, very recently, yes.
Okay, so they show a significantly lower income and significantly lower net income than Ottawa, right? Mostly impacted by a vacancy.
Can you walk us through that? Because I've not seen it. Maybe I'm on the wrong sheet.
Well,
Which page?
page 8,
Yeah,
line 122, total income,
1 second.
which is after vacancy. Compare that to the assessor's effective gross income of 161,762. And then net operating income, 55,956 versus the assessor's net operating income of 88,969.
So she's lower.
No,
We're higher. The model is higher based on the vacancy because we have a vacancy at 2.6%, which is 4,000. And the vacancy on the income and expense information is almost 45,000.
So what's that 190,000 at the top?
That's the registered rents.
That's the registered rent before vacancies.
Yeah,
Yeah, but registered rent, not
That-
actual
Not
rents.
actuals.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get into that in my presentation.
Yeah.
That number is not reliable, but,
Okay.
so it is essentially, your NOI is 88,000 and the owner's claiming 55,000.
yes. Well, 56 almost.
Oh, yeah, now I can read the number. I just have to squint a little bit more.
Now, you're not showing that there was a sale on this property, are you?
The sale is post-reference.
Oh, that's all I'm asking, so there was a post-reference sale?
There was a post-reference sale, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff,
I have nothing, no, thanks.
Lynn,
Yeah, I did, just looking at your model rents. So number 2, I think you said, and number 4, your comparables on page 3.
Yes.
Those are the sister properties to the subject? Or they're part of the one economic unit?
They're part of the one economic unit.
Yeah, I note that they're built the same year and they
Mhm.
have the same suite mix and the same gross floor, like everything is the same.
Yes.
Okay. And can you speak to that vacancy that's in the statement at the back?
No, the only information that we have is on the income and expense mailer, and I'm not aware of any reason for it, unless it's, yeah. I'm also not sure when the upgrades were done.
For the
So
printing?
this- when the upgrades were done, because there was upgrades done that adjusted that caused the department to adjust the effective age to 1974. So as we looked at the other property with having vacancies after extensive construction, I don't know if that's the case here as well.
Okay. And then that effective age then also impacted the cap rate in your
Yes, it did.
model,
Yes.
correct? Okay. And did you inspect the property?
No, we did not.
Anywhere in your notes as to when it was?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So on your page 3, when you talk about that $814, that's a model or is that using their rent?
$814.12 is the model. It's the income and divided by the number of the total number of units.
So which one is the sister?
Number 2
Number 2 is?
and number 4.
But we're not dealing with them today, are we?
No, we're not.
No, they were been dealt with.
Oh, they've been dealt with. Wouldn't it be nice if we did them all at one time?
Ask a glorious leader. I do.
Okay, I've got no further questions. On to your report, Mr. Newcomb.
Okay, so the assessor's statement on page 8, I do not have. I work for the new owner. So this was something that the old owner filed. The reason I had 2 previous years is because I did work for the previous owner in past years. I actually did the appraisal of this site after it was remodeled and put back on the market. That was in 2011 or 12 that was remodeled. So they had 3 blocks, all similar, and remodeled them one at a time, put them back on the market. Then it was sold in post reference to my client. Now, I'm getting into, I'm gonna choose my words carefully here as to avoid conflicts, because I did work for both parties, but today, for tax assessment purposes, I have some concerns about the statements. The 2015 showed an NOI of 96,000, 16 95,000, and the one filed in March of 2018 dropped to 55,000. That shouldn't happen, and what I've noted on this property and the 2 other properties is that in the final year there were significant claims of vacancy, which dropped the incomes dramatically. I don't know, I have not asked the new owner if he's seen this and whether or not a purchase decision was based on this. My opinion is that all of the statements have to be, we have to have some concern about reliability. On the page 8 of the assessor's brief, the one I don't have, just point out that line 105 at 190,000.
Page 8, which line did you say?
105.
You have to be patient with me here as I try to find it. Here we go.
So what this line is rental income as potential income. And this is not, there's, in the apartment world, there are 2 types of potential incomes. One is if you took all the paid rents and, or the rents you're able to get from the market, and even if they're vacant, you put it here. The other one is the RTB registered rents. This is an RTB registered rent. So it's not anywhere near what the real rate is. In previous years, the year right before this, and this is on my page 3, that number was 171,000. So between these 2 years, And remember, we're still in RTB 5-year exemption land. Right to re-register your rents at any time. My assumption here is that the rents were re-registered from 171 upwards to 190. It's an artificial number because it's, but it means what you could go to, but it's not what the market will bear. So in previous years, the vacancy was running about 4 or 5%. Then on this one, what you see here is an adjustment of 14,542. That would be the difference between the RTB registrations and the actual potential income. So the actual potential is like.
Are you still on page 3?
No,
back to
sorry,
page-
assessor's page 8.
Yeah.
Tell me when you change pages, because I get confused.
Sorry, you were expecting me to deal with my own schizophrenia here?
That would be helpful.
What do you call this? Okay, I'll try my best. So page 8, the actual market potential, based on our investigation, is approximately $176,000. Then after that, they have a $44,000 vacancy, which is significant. As I said, in previous years, it was closer to 4%. I'm looking back on my page 3. So in trying to, let's see, I think I've got another one here. Yeah, the previous period, the vacancy was 1.5%, but that was on a registered rent of 165,000.
Did you include that?
I did, it's not in here, I just have, I'm just for sake, my concern here is that we had in the last year before sale, an increase in the RTB registration. And then on top of that, a natural vacancy. The first year after renovation, the RTB registration was actually 120,000. So because, and that was in 2013. So in 2013, you had 5 years of no restrictions because of the amount of capital put into the building. This property did meet the lifting of the 5-year holiday on restrictions, on rental increases. And in the last year before sale, then they applied it. So it all is all rather difficult to follow. And the only thing, and I asked the question, what happened in this last year? What happened with the vacancy? And the answer was that was real, it was actual. It happened in all of the buildings at the same time, right before sale. See, now you're just
How convenient.
Yes, yes.
That's better.
It's very difficult for me to say, to offer an opinion on what I think happened here, because I did represent both sides. All I can say is I'm concerned about the reliability of statements, and as a result, anyway, we've never had the 2017 statement. We're going to rely on 15 and 16, which are at much higher income, 95, 96,000, and so therefore our NOI is 97,000. That's higher than the assessors. However, the very, very weak revenue would lead me to cap this significantly higher at 7%. And one of the reasons we were looking at that is that while this was going on, we were monitoring the maintenance and repair costs. And after renovation, you generally enjoy a brief holiday. The renovations here, as I mentioned, were much more extensive than most. And the first year renovations saw maintenance and repair costs, I think $200 or $300 a unit. So you have to consider that over time they're gonna rise, and they have continued to rise over time. In our report, we had 20,600, the assessors next year 23,400. So it went up 20,600. I said 23,000, so it was increasing. Year prior, was, sorry, I just had it at the tip of my fingers here. Yeah, the year prior was $8,900. So part of what's happening is after 5 years, the deferred maintenance costs are catching up with them. There was nothing spent in the early years, and you have to keep things up. And with that, in the apartment world, what that means is every time you have a suite turnover, you have to redo your suite. You have to, at the very least, repaint and clean, but most owners, if they're hoping to get rents like this property is, would generally do reflooring and replace fixtures as required, and any appliance that's began to be dated or scratch looking, replace on turnover. But when you start cutting corners, then you defer the maintenance, and then it catches up with you. That's what's happening here. And the other issue, and we found this, we've been going through all of our properties. On page 4, there is a registration on the property under the Contaminated Impact Sites Program. This is from the publication from October 2019, so it's very, very current. And you see 1924 Portage is registered, and also 1945, which was part of this group, is registered. So there is environmental registration on the site. In the world of residential, an environmental registration is a big issue in that lenders will definitely shy away from them, even if they're willing to take a shot in some other properties, or you can find other lenders. Most all lenders don't want to be involved. And even if you find one, you're going to be dealing with low ratio loans and higher interest rates. It just drives your cap rate requirements up. Cap rates are completely linked to money costs. On page 24, this is an example of capitalization rates. We used to do this all the time in appraisals, and nobody wants to see this anymore, because people have to come to realizations that some caps aren't attainable. But what I'm showing here is that on a 70% equity mortgage at 4.5%, you've got to a cap at 5.4% just to pay the loan. No return on equity. If you would like to get a 2-point return on equity, the cap's got to be 8%. And the money in investing is always based on making your equity work. So after the loan's been paid, how much money can you make? The greater the ratio is, the more money you make. So if you got like a 10% ratio loan, you could have a lower cap because you need less money to get a rate of return. What we have happening with impacted properties is you drive that ratio down to 50%, which means that it drives the cap rate requirement just to pay the mortgages up and depriving you of any equity opportunity. And that's generally what the mortgage equity side of it. Cap rates weren't invented for assessors, they were invented for banks. They were not invented. They become necessary by banks because they want to know if you make enough money to pay the mortgage. It's as simple as that. Everything goes back to, do you have enough money to pay the mortgage? When you are dealing with an environmental, and if you have an impact, you have a lower ratio or a higher interest rate, your mortgage is going to be higher. So the cap's got to be higher in the market, and it's very, very simple. But the concept is simple. As far as quantifying it, it becomes difficult because you have to actually take two properties side by side, one contaminated, one not contaminated, go to the same bank and say, give me a loan, right? It never happens because you get turned down. What happens is then you would go to lenders of last resort that cost more money. So this was a major concern for any property. As far as hot as the interest is in multifamily, this isn't going to get standard mortgage financing. It's going to get a higher risk mortgage financing. And by the way, the interest rate I used at 4.5 is the standard rate. It's the rack rate. People can get lower rates if you have money in the bank. This is not like your house mortgage. You can get a house mortgage at 2.5% because it's CMHC guaranteed and it's a house mortgage. This is the standard rate for commercial loans. The lower amounts are based on the investor, the owner's own financial strength. That's the rate I would get if I went to a bank and wanted to borrow money to buy an apartment block. That's the rate most people would get. Now, other good rates, if you have a big enough investment, millions of dollars, then you can then borrow money from bigger investment firms who have that sort of capital. And the biggest one in Canada is the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund, who will invest in any property basically to get a 3% rate of return. So they're driving down the caps, but they're driving them down on good properties. And they absolutely refuse to lend on any impacted property. But that's just the way the money markets work, and that's a lot of discussion on an impact. In the old days, we used to have this guy, just trying to remember his name, Sid Khan. Stigma, 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 stigma. That was his mantra. 2% for stigma. And take any cap, add 2%. And he actually had a PhD in some sort of real estate valuation from University of Minnesota. But he's right though, the actual number is about 2 points higher. But that's in the days when we had 9 and 10% caps, and then you'd have to go to 11 and 12%. So it's obviously based on ratio. But my opinion here is that what we're dealing with is a questionable statement, which normally it's a property that you would probably see capping in about 6 1/4, and then I would go to 7% for the environmental. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Questions, Jennifer?
No, thank you.
I saw you think about it. Jeff?
I don't have it.
Lynn?
Well, the question needs to be asked, what is the contamination?
Fire graders.
Yes.
Fire graders.
I'm not sure. The Manitoba Conservation used to have an open file policy, so you can go in and get it anytime you want. Now you need several levels of permission and about 3 months of request time to view it, and then you only get a little printout. We used to be able to walk in, read the whole file, and get copies of it, so I don't know. I was actually going to ask Marcel, because he may have been around in 1953.
68 years ago? Yeah.
And under the contaminated sites legislation, they have to develop a program to remediate and establish, well, obviously get cost estimates
Wow.
to do that. Has your client done that?
No, there are triggers to, to this process, and the trigger would be a process by, I'm just trying to think how it usually be, like redevelopment is an obvious trigger. In the appraisal world, we look at it in three phases, is cost to clean, cost to monitor, and market resistance. So cost to clean, we don't know. We're not taking into account. Cost to monitor, that would include any time you took financing going to minimum of phase two. So that's $20,000 a sale to do a phase two. And then market resistance is what I'm talking about, is difficulty getting lending, the market not showing interest in it, and that's based on a loss in value, which I'm saying is about a point on the cap side.
And how long has it been on the register?
You know, I don't know, because what's I find strange about this is that Firecracker is registered. They didn't buy it until 2007. Usually you see the original polluter named. But you know what, I'm looking through this page, a lot of these people are new. Yeah, so we don't know.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, all three of their properties are listed. 1918 is
Yeah.
the fourth one.
That's the offered one,
Yeah.
like they're,
So it could be a lot of things, and of course, when they were built, heating oil was probably used instead of natural gas. It could be something as simple as that there was a outside or inside heating oil tank. We don't know.
Okay. Thank you for that.
that's good. Let's end that one. Let's move on to the number 6, the last property. Oh, we're really moving. 35 Bonita. Didn't we just deal with Bonita? Hmm? Jennifer, when you're ready. And again, it's just assessment.
This is file number 19-4543, roll number 08 0027 49000. The assessed value is $2,283,000. Classification is 20, liability status is taxable. This is one apartment building with 2 stories, built in 1963 with 29 suites and 29 outdoor parking spots. On page 2, we have 21 one-bedroom suites and 8 two-bedroom suites. The average monthly rent per unit is $767.30. We've applied a 2.6% vacancy rate, a 53.48% expense rate, and a 5.3% cap rate, giving us the $2,283,000. There are some comparable rents on page 3. And income and expense information is on page 7 and 8. And on page 9, we've got a small map up in the corner and 2 overhead views. Thank you.
Mr. Newcomb, questions?
All done by the model?
Yes.
I was wondering something here. Some of the other properties that were older and at different dates were at model at 5.1% cap, and this one's at 5.3. Is there a boundary, a border on age that does this, or is it lots of other things?
Age does impact, but also there's other factors that influence it, and I think that one of the things could be the quality or the condition or quality of the building, with just being recently renovated as opposed to this one. It doesn't appear that the age has been changed.
Right,
The-
okay, yeah.
Mhm.
So that along with the age change, there's an implied quality?
Oh, or it could be that with, if it was inspected, whoever did the construction on it, they would have also looked at the quality and compared it to 1963 finish compared to the newer finish.
Okay.
If you're looking for more questions, or?
No, I mean, that was it. I was stalling because I'm looking for something else. If you come up with some more.
Okay, Jeff?
Did you inspect?
No, I did not inspect.
Jeff?
Do you have any knowledge or commentary on work that's been done or current quality? Okay, no questions.
Lynn?
No questions.
No questions. Mr. Newton, on to your report, if you're done searching.
I'm going to turn one page and see if I found the number. Okay. Subject property is, now this is a different style of statement. The last properties we heard are all owned by the same party. However, you can see that some of their statements were prepared and some, when they bought the property, they inherited those statements. It's always a good comfort level to work with a statement you know, because you can answer things very easily. This property's statement is very, very consistent and very, very straightforward, and they write it in ink. The income, as you see on our page one, we're doing a 3-year average again, and we're showing income rising from 249 to 255. That's what you would expect to see. So no red flags there, and we're using 255,000 as their income. So this is the income after application of vacancy. So that differs from the assessor by about $5,000. Now, if you went to the trouble to, well, not trouble hard at all, on the page, we don't include them because they are a bit on the misleading side. If, well, not misleading, but they're just more for me to explain than I talk more.
Then don't include that page.
Assessor's page 8. Gross potential suite income at 100% occupancy, 293,000. That's the RTD registered number. I know that for a fact, right? So the income on page 7, 255,000, is not the difference based in vacancy, actual vacancy. It's a mix of vacancy and RTD, not in RTD, because just because you're registered in RTD at 975, you're not getting 975. Now, typically with this company, this I know for a fact because one of my staff rents, not in this building, but another their buildings. They got a 2-bedroom that's RTD registered at 1025 and they're paying 925. And the answer from the owner is that's what the market bears. I just got to register higher in case Christmas comes and you know. Now the increases that they've actually experienced, and you can tell the 15 to 16 is about 1%. That was the guideline, and then from 16 to 17 was a bit higher than that. So they're not doing that by increasing the rents inside RTB so much as they also pursue a much different policy. Now, in the expense side, this is the bottom box where we have the expenses, R&M, adjusted R&M, and adjusted expenses. There was one year, 2016, where the R&M expenses were 107,000. So they were high that year because there were some items that they were catching up with. And in that year, they also applied for an above guideline RTB increase, which turned out to be about, I think, 1.5%, which is why the income in 2017 is closer to about 4% higher, or no, 3% higher, rather than the RTB guideline increase of 1.5%. That's just one of the nuances about the way people run these blocks. So, and there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, and the assessment department, of course, will catch up 2 years from now, because that's the way the system works. So what we've done then is stabilize it, because in that particular year of 2016, without our adjustment, our actual NOI would have been $55,000 lower, or 51,000 instead of 106,000. So this is an example of stabilization. We knew that they had some expenses that were higher than normal, and that people wouldn't be looking at in terms of the revenue and expenses, because they turned around and were able to generate more income with them. They are expenses by taxation, but by RTB deemed capital in nature. So it's a legitimate, clearly legitimate, because if I can talk about it, you know, it's the way, this is the way most departments are run. And as a result of it, we have very, very good statement reliability. So when we average out our expenses, our little adjustment ended up showing that, as you should see, is that the expenses are fairly stable. This is just a property where we had enough data to stabilize expenses. And our NOI then becomes 111,480, and then this compares with the assessor's NOI of 129,888. So that's our first difference, and our second is the cap rate side. Property is well looked after, has not had a major renovation, it's just well looked after, and we're at 6.25%, and I was saying earlier about a target of 30 units for being a better site, so we're almost 30 units, and this is what I was saying, is then you can cap lower because your expenses have a stabler base, and your income you're protected from incredible variances because you don't have enough suite counts. As far as comparables like this, we've discussed the number. The closest to this in cap would actually be 1830 Portage that I discussed earlier, and that's on my page 33. In terms of all around, that's at 658. That one had a higher above guideline RTB increase because there's more money spent, and that ended up improving the revenue prior to sale, which is why it capped at a higher rate. And on the Collier's cap rate study, I really haven't talked much about it, other than a property like this would probably not make our list because our definitions, page 20, a B building, wood frame construction, age 20 to 40 years, average suburban quality, well-maintained, minor deferred capital expense. So the only issue with this is it might be a bit on the older side, but it could be close to being in our study. So in our study, the actual numbers on low-rise Vs are 5.5 to 6.5. So I'm putting it in our rates at 625. As this is borderline whether it would fit or not, but I guess it depends how excited your investor is or your agent.
Questions, Jennifer?
No, thank you.
Lynn?
No, I have no questions.
Jeff?
I have none.
Well, that'll conclude the matters for today. Thank you very much for coming to visit. Get that that printer fixed, please.